so that fluctuates. If there's a fee, say they're not a non-family member, they're entitled to the fee, and the family member might waive that fee.
The statute for personal representatives, it just says up to 5%. And, 5% can get to be a real big number.
Yeah.
So if you have a will, and you've got the right people named, you can say in that will that the fee won't exceed whatever. 1%, 10,000, 5,000. And that person doesn't want to accept what you put in the will. They don't have to do the job.
Right.
But there's more cost with an intestacy than with a testate stuff.
With the will.
Yeah, with a will.
Okay.
And in some states, you've got substantial attorney fees which are statutorily imposed.
Yeah, you don't want to die in Florida. Florida has a statute that says the attorney gets 3%. And just period. The attorney gets 3%. Well, you might have $50 million. So it says the personal representative gets 5%. So if you're in Florida, and quickly, this get too specific, I'm sorry. But in Florida, you got to have a trust, not just a will. I really wasn't going to get into trust, but that's basically the board of probate. None of those fees have to apply. I would assume everybody here is South Carolina.
Chuck, no.
Chuck,
Where is the best place to keep your will?
Where's the best place to keep your will?
if you have a safe deposit box, that's the best place. A lot of people don't think that. But the personal representative can get into the box before they're appointed to get the will. And the bank will be there with you. We keep a lot of documents. I finally realized I got to get rid of a lot of documents that are filling up the safes that we have. Had that conversation today. I probably don't even remember some of those people 40 years ago. So anyway, a lot of attorneys will keep them, but space is such an issue. And
is there such a thing as multiple versions of that document? Could you hold one and we have one in the safety deposit box, or is there only one official? There's one official document.
And I would prefer to keep it myself, just so I would know where it was. My children would know where it was. You buy a box at Lowe's for $50 to keep it fire. But a safe deposit box, especially if your bank gives it to you, so banks used to, is a fine place.
That's a good question. Good question. All right.
There can be some issues with your safety deposit box, but if you don't have certain documents, that even your spouse may not get in until a certain form has been filed with the state.
Well, and I was told by a church member just this last week, who I visited, who shall remain nameless, that at this spouse's death, that or language did exist, and so they did have access, but the bank said if it had said and, that they would not have had access.
Yes.
So,
if you put it in the box, you're subject to the rules that bank has.
yeah.
But at least legally, if you have a copy of the will and you have the key to the box, that's pretty critical. And you can identify yourself. They will go with you to open the box, and they'll make sure that whatever you take out is what you show them a copy of. I have lots of people that take these things home and just put them in a drawer. And that might be safe, it might not be. Your house can burn very easily. People get that will and tear it up because they don't like what it says. And I have had that happen. But that's real basic. Yeah, I'll be here after this if anybody has a question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stephen, can you pass that out? So, Stephen has been a part of the Greenwood Community Foundation for a little over a year. A little under a year. And you have worked with families and individuals generously, what's the most rewarding part of what you do?
John, I've learned that people are generous because they're grateful. They're grateful to their families, they're grateful to their communities, grateful to their customers and their clients, and perhaps even grateful to their churches. What I find most rewarding about this work is helping these donors find a way to pay that gratitude forward. So every conversation that I have at the Community Foundation starts with these two questions. What would you like to do for Greenwood, for the world, perhaps for your church? What can I do to make that happen?
That's good. What about ways that wording can be included for organizations like, whether it's the foundation, whether it's the church's foundation, whether it's a specific nonprofit in town, help us through that language.
So we've talked about how you might make a charitable bequest in your will, but honestly, the most impactful gifts that I've seen in my year at the Community Foundation have been individual retirement accounts and life insurance benefits. That process can be as simple as changing the name of your beneficiary. Right? One of our largest funds at the Community Foundation is comprised entirely of the proceeds of a person's estate. Before this man died, he decided that all of the proceeds of the investment of those funds would go to support one particular local nonprofit. So now every quarter, I get to deliver a large six-figure check to that nonprofit. It's one of the happiest things that I do.
For those who say, I don't have enough money to make a difference, how might you respond?
We talk and think about this a lot at the Community Foundation. We do have a minimum amount required to open a fund with our organization, but we also offer what we call acorn funds, which present a way for a donor to give a little bit at a time until enough is built that meaningful grants can be made. So think of an acorn growing into a tree. But more than that, John, I tend to think of fundraising as being a way of being in community. To bring this back to the church, perhaps we might think of giving any amount as a way toward being a part of a community of believers who, through their generosity, are sharing God's love with the world.
We were talking, we had a budget prep meeting, as I've already mentioned, and one of the examples, we were talking about all the things. We were talking about the expenses that the church has, and this next year's budget, we're making plans to present a budget to the congregation at the end of September. Mark it in your calendars that Sunday morning. We're going to meet during Sunday school in the fellowship hall and present it to everyone. But that budget prep committee, we began to talk about how important the image of the offering plate is in this space. And I've got colleagues who say, pass the plate if you want to. It's not going to make a dent in what comes into the church. And my response to them has been, I'm an old head when it comes to this. My response is, I am interested in the children in our space watching that offering plate pass under their noses. Right? I mean, that is a physical reminder that the first worship that believers had in Genesis consisted, I've said this before, consisted of a worshiper, an altar, and an offering. If we don't make an offering in worship. Have we closed that circle? And the example that one of the people around me was Catherine White, that Catherine said was, sometimes we think just because we put $1 in, it's insignificant. But in community, our dollars together create capacity for us to do things that only God can be a part of, right? And so everybody doing their part is what creates capacity for organizations like yours, but also organizations like our church. So I'm glad you said that. So what's the role of a legacy fund or donor-advised funds in faith-based giving?
I write a lot of checks on behalf of fund advisors to local churches. We all know what a donor-advised fund is. A donor-advised fund operates much like a private foundation, or think about a family foundation, except that the donor-advised fund is not subject to the same legal restrictions, tax impact, or administrative costs. After the fund is created, the donor is able to exercise a right to recommend that grants be made at any time and for any legal purpose. And so at the Community Foundation, we currently administer 41 donor-advised donor-advised funds. And from those funds, we very often see grants made to local churches. Now, in terms of legacy, donors, through the establishment of these funds, are able to create their own legacy, right? They can restrict the use of the fund in perpetuity to certain fields of interest or even a list of charitable causes. But what I find to be even more heartwarming is that so many of our fund advisors have named their children and grandchildren as successor advisors. I believe that in so doing, they are teaching the importance of a lifetime of charitable giving, but they're also extending their family's legacy even further into the future.
One of the first times I ever heard about donor-advised funds was in Rome. I had a family, a five-generation family at First Baptist Church in Rome, and the grandfather and grandmother set up a donor-advised fund at the Community Foundation in Rome, and their grandchildren were the committee that every year met. It was a reason to get the grandchildren together, but also those high school and college-age children at the time gathered together, and the five of them decided where those funds would be appropriated and given every year. And it was a beautiful, I'd never seen it before, but it was a beautiful image of teaching generosity in a tangible way through legacy. And it was teaching those folks, not those five grandchildren, not to hoard, but to be generous, right? It was a beautiful image.
We see examples of that all the time, John, in the Community Foundation. We see families who collaborate in that way on deciding which grants should be made, but we even have the special example of one family where the father and mother established a donor-advised fund where they are the fund advisors, but they also established a second donor-advised fund where their then minor children would decide upon grants that the father would then execute.
That's awesome. So we've talked a little bit. Are there other examples of generosity in action through your work?
Well, generosity is it's a daily occurrence for me, and that's, again, that speaks to how rewarding this job is. The example that comes to my mind, John, just because I've been active around this fund here this week. When I started this job last summer, I was told that I needed to know about a woman from McCormick named Robin Ochin. And you might know that my people are all from McCormick, but I've never heard the name Robin Ochin. She had moved there later in life teacher, eventually retired from the school district, and sadly passed away younger than she should have. And yet, before her death, she established a fund with the Community Foundation that was meant to provide opportunities for McCormick County students. We didn't know, had no way of knowing at the time, what she had left. We heard her talk about wanting to sponsor field trips to Athens, Georgia to go see the Botanical Garden, or to Augusta to see a concert. We thought, well, that's wonderful. That's an opportunity that didn't exist before for McCormick County students. And then in January, the proceeds of her estate were delivered. And beginning next spring, we will have undoubtedly over $60,000 to spend on behalf of McCormick County students. And, the best part about this story is the name of her fund. She called her fund the Wider World Fund, meant to show these students that there is a wider world out there.
Wow, that's beautiful. Y'all have any questions for Stephen before I relieve him of his duties and land this plane?
I'll stick around. I brought some materials.
Any funds not done or advised?
We very much do. We have a fairly broad spectrum of work. We hold agency funds, which are funds that local nonprofits have given to us to invest. We've left that unsaid, but that's really probably the most prominent feature of community foundations. We take nearly all of the money that is given to us and we invest it. We have an entire team of investment advisors that includes Kenneth Parham, who might be someone that you all know. And we bring back, so far this year, by the end of July, we brought back between 12 and 13% on those investments. So agencies will give us money, hoping that we'll make that money grow, and then give the proceeds back to the agency. We have field of interest funds where a person has established a fund, perhaps not knowing as much about Greenwood, and has asked the Community Foundation to find grantees within that field of interest that might help carry out good work. We have scholarships. We've just come through scholarship season. Obviously, we're helping young people go to college. We have designated funds like the fund I described earlier, where a person before his death designated all of the proceeds of his fund for one particular nonprofit. We call that designated fund. We have our own initiatives. We had a community response fund that was formed in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. We were able to make grants to local nonprofits who were engaged in recovery efforts, and we're still doing that to this day. We expect that the recovery from the hurricane will last for years to come. We have other initiatives of our own that are meant to allow us to make our own grants. You might see us in the newspaper from time to time where we're making grants on a regular basis. This year we are carrying out 7 grant cycles, which is an all-time high for our community foundation. We're very busy.
That's a great question. Anybody else? George? Who does the investing for the community foundation?
There was a time where, especially in the spring, as we went through a volatile time in the stock market, where I wanted everyone to know that I was not doing this. Just like everybody else, for a brief period of time, we saw some losses in the stock market. Of course, that's rebounded. And again, we've done very well this year. We take investment very seriously because, again, it's one of the features that we have to offer that might set us apart from some other nonprofits. Chuck Motes is on our board of directors. Our board has crafted an investment policy that calls for the investment of our assets. We currently control about $28 million. We invest that money across a variety of asset classes. Those allocations are set by the board. And then that money is given to managers, and I don't mind telling you our managers are UBS, Kenneth Farmsburg, and Greenville, and First Citizens based out of Charlotte. And within that policy, they have the freedom to make decisions, and I see it every day, they are actively managing those funds, and I'm getting those reports and those transactions every single day.
And because $28 billion are commingled, acorn funds and even smaller investment funds have greater capacity for growth because they're commingled or not?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, you hit upon one of the great reasons to invest with a community foundation. We are able to access products because of the size of our that individuals might not be able to. And so I think that's why you see us showing a return that may be greater than you might see with a smaller foundation or even an individual grant.
Yep, that's great. Any other questions for Steve before?
To individual entities that would really need to say, more conservative one, scale.
So for the viewing audience, Bob was asking if individual donors say, I want to be more conservative inside how I invest.
We have a threshold that when reached would allow a donor to use his or her own choice of financial advisor. That's not on offer to every donor. We have great confidence in our investment managers. And again, that's a decision that maybe is the most important that the board makes.
Right.
But we do offer that flexibility.
That's great. Anybody else? Thank you. Appreciate it very much. So you all know, I did not get someone from our own foundation to stand up here and talk about it, but we have assets in the neighborhood of about under $4.5 million in the First Baptist Church Foundation, and it namely has grown from one gift that has been given and grown over time, and frankly, it has allowed and will allow us to have capacity and have future that would not exist without it as well. And so, and frankly, when I found out when we were getting hot and heavy in the interview process, it's helpful for a preacher to hear that the church has assets in something like the First Baptist Foundation, because it allows us to dream, to offer, much like Stephen, a way for our folks who want to leave a legacy, to do it through several vehicles. One is through great organizations like the Community Foundation, but also our own. And I think I've got a friend who works in Huntsville at First Baptist Church, and the only thing I find it interesting with the donor advised funds, you know, if someone came to the Greenwood Community Foundation and said, I want to make a bequest, and I only want to give scholarships to left-handed people from McCormick, you know, that's hard. And sometimes even foundations have to be discerning about the money that they do take, because there may be a day when left-handed people don't exist anymore. And what happens to those funds? They just live on forever and never get spent. The best example was an older lady that was a member of First Baptist Church in Huntsville, was on a senior adult trip, and the bathroom on the bus broke. And it was a miserable trip, I think. And in her will, she left a sizable amount of money for the church to buy a bus, a brand new bus. Those things are not cheap. But it was enough money to buy the bus. But the business administrator and I are friends, and he said that they pushed back on the trust and said, you know, we're not in the bus business, and we're not going to buy a bus. Would you consider allowing us to take those funds and invest them? And every time a youth trip happens, and every time a senior adult trip happens, or a children's event happens, we will rent a bus with a bathroom, a working bathroom. And it has allowed my friend and colleague in student ministry at First Baptist Church with a massive youth ministry, he got to take transportation out of his budget. Because guess what he doesn't have to pay for anymore? Buses. And not only that, he doesn't have to get stinky buses. He can get really nice buses with bathrooms. That's just another example of thinking forward and not just thinking about left-handed people from Carmen. Not that they aren't spectacular, right? And this isn't just about avoiding taxes or following laws. It's about healthy stewardship and wise and discerning decision-making, right? Jesus taught us that where our treasure is where our heart is. And our intentions will follow. So our values are baked into the financial decisions we make. They are. And every preacher will tell you, if you'll just let me look at two things, I'll tell you what you value. Give me your checkbook and give me your calendar. And I'll tell you what you care about, right? All of us are the same way, right? I'm preaching to the man in the mirror. And we can live generously now, and we can promote generosity even after we are gone. And so, 1 Timothy 6 says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. This way they will lay up treasure as a firm a foundation for the coming age. What I want you to think about as we leave, I'm going to pass these out, this legacy planning checklist. What is one step we need to take to prepare my legacy? And maybe you've got wills, you've got beneficiaries, you've got your trust laid out, everything's neat and tidy. Maybe it's in relationship. Maybe it's spiritual. What's the step that you need to take, that I need to take? I got to update, Jennifer and I got to update our will after listening to Kenny tonight. I got work to do, right? What's the work that you have to do this week? I've got this legacy planning list I want you to take. Talk to your family, to your advisor this month maybe, and consider organizations that you value and that you know are doing good work, the work kind of things that you believe in, and make plans to support their mission and ministry beyond even your life. That's my encouragement. Do y'all have questions or comments for me? Next week, we're going to talk about funeral planning. Again, Kitty and Steve have talked about finances and families fight and struggle over end-of-life choices, whether it be about DNR, whether it be about a living will, whether it be about all those choices. Those are hard choices. And if we are clear about our intent, it's so helpful. A widow in the last year made some quick decisions about how her husband would be buried. And she looked me in the eye and she said, I know this is what he wanted because we talked about it. Give that gift to your family, right? Be clear about your intentions. And then next week, Steve Gann will be here and we're going to talk about funeral planning. One of the gift I'm going to give you and what I would like for us to build is a file full of funeral plans. My mother called me, and I think I said this last week, and asked if Keith Jameson was singing her funeral. I said, how many other people are singing? She's like, 4 or 5. I don't know where that's written down, but if I pass this week, I want Jennifer to know that she can call the church and that my funeral planning guide is in a file folder. And the decisions I wanted are in it, right? Where I wanted to be buried, what songs I want sung, and I guess I need a list of soloists as well, right? Those are important, and they will be so life-giving. I know it's not any fun to think about, but I've sat with families who've had to decide, And I've sat with families who had that document in front of them. And I'm going to tell you what, you want the document in front of your family. It'll be a gift. And we're going to talk about that next week. Thank you all for being here.
One thing.
Yes.
When you talk about our foundation, if we give money to our foundation, has it got restrictions on it that were put on it years ago when that first gift was made? Does it follow those restrictions, or? I think
Most of the corpus of our foundation right now is guided by that original gift, right? And I know the foundation board has been talking about, Kenny actually made a presentation to them the last time we met about the origination fund and how we might be able to have funds inside. So, I've seen where the foundation in Rome, which is over $6 billion at this point, had, if you gave a gift, and there was a minimum, in their case it was $25,000, that's the only way to get to a named fund. So there could be a named fund inside the First Baptist Foundation, but it would need to rise to a level of giving that wasn't $2,500. And then, depending on, again, what the fund's going to be used for, I think our foundation board and the church would have to be discerning as well to say, well, Tommy only wants to give scholarships to dentists. Are we in the dentistry business? We just have to say, does the request match our mission and vision? And if it does,
we want to give it non-restricted.
yes,
If they can use it as needed.
I think so. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank y'all for being here this week and putting up with me. I appreciate y'all coming. And thanks to Kenny and Stephen for what they did tonight.